I can give you a very, very quick recap from the top of my brain from the movies. So, recap of the book was Harry was born. Harry was dropped at his aunt's and uncle's house. He grew up until the age of 10 and hated living with his aunt and uncle. He got letters to say he's been invited to Hogwarts. He doesn't know what it was. His aunt and uncle then were trying to hide this information from him. And they went to like a lighthouse in the a bit off the coast, so away from the land. You could only get there by rowboat. They was there, and then on the evening that ticked over to Harry's 10th birthday or 11th birthday, one of the two, Hagrid turns up with that copy of the same letter again, and gives Harry the letter that says he's been invited to the to study at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. 11th, yeah, okay. And so he goes with Hagrid, and they go to Diagon Alley, and they go ahead and make a withdrawal from Harry's bank account at Gringotts Bank, and he gets some money and goes and purchases the equipment that he'll need for his first year of school, including him getting his wand. After multiple tries on wands, he finally got himself a wand, and that particular wand is essentially like a brother wand to Lord Voldemort's wand. And so he got everything he needed from there. Wand acquired, exactly. He got everything he needed from there, and then right at the end of where we was reading, he wanted... I'm just double checking here. He was very worried about being able to do magic. And he's saying like, I'll give you a half a page recap before we read into where we were. So it says, everyone thinks I'm special, he said at last. All those people in the Leaky Cauldron, Professor Quirrell, Mr. Ollivander. But I don't know anything about magic at all. How can they expect great things? I'm famous, and I can't even remember what I'm famous for. I don't know what happened when the night my parents died. Hagrid leant across the table. Behind the wild beard and the eyebrows, he wore a very kind smile. Don't you worry, Harry. You'll learn fast enough. Everyone starts at the beginning at Hogwarts. You'll be just fine. Just be yourself. I know that it's hard. Yeah, I've been singled out, and that's always hard. But yeah, you'll have a great time at Hogwarts. I did, and still do. It's a matter of fact. Hagrid helped Harry onto the train that would take him back to the Dursleys, then handed him an envelope. Your ticket for Hogwarts, he said. 1st of September. King's Cross. It's all on your ticket. Any problems with the Dursleys, send me a letter with your owl. She'll know where to find me. See you soon, Harry. The train pulled out of the station. Harry wanted to watch Hagrid until he was out of sight. He rose in his seat and pressed his nose against the window, but he blinked and Hagrid had gone. So that was the half the page recap towards the end of where we got up to last time. Okay? So we are now starting on the funny page number of page 69. Nice. Chapter 6. The Journey from Platform 9 3/4. Fun fact, I've seen Platform 9 3/4 a couple of times at King's Cross. It's always surrounded by tourists. Always surrounded by tourists. Funny to look at, because you're like, oh yeah, movie reference. And it's forever a huge queue of people just queuing to get a picture there. And then there's, of course, a Harry Potter a merchandise shop literally right next to it, of course. And so they get a lot of foot traffic in there. And so if you're trying to go to the toilets in that end, you've got to walk like, you've got to give the crowd a wide berth to get round them so you can get to the toilets. Anyway, Chapter 6. The Journey from Platform 9 3/4. Harry's last month with the Dursleys wasn't fun. True, Dudley was now scared of Harry. He wouldn't stay in the same room. While Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon didn't shut Harry in his cupboard, force him to do anything, or shout at him. In fact, They didn't speak to him at all. Half terrified, half furious, they acted as though any chair with Harry in it was empty, although this was an improvement in many ways. It did become a bit depressing after a while. Harry kept to his room, with his new owl for company. He had decided to call her Hedwig, a name he had found in a history of magic book. His school books were very interesting. He lay on his bed, reading late into the night, Hedwig swooping in and out of the open window as she pleased. It was lucky that Aunt Petunia didn't come in to hoover any more, because Hedwig kept bringing back dead mice. Every night before he went to sleep, Harry ticked off another day on the piece of paper he had pinned to the wall, counting down to September the 1st. On the last day of August, he thought he'd better speak to his aunt and uncle about getting to King's Cross Station the next day, so he went down to the living room where they were watching a quiz show on television. He cleared his throat to let them know he was there, and Dudley screamed and ran from the room. Uncle Vernon. Uncle Vernon grunted to show he was listening. I need to be at King's Cross tomorrow to go to Hogwarts. Uncle Vernon grunted again. Would it be all right if you gave me a lift? Grunt. Harry supposed that meant yes. Thank you. He was about to go back upstairs when Uncle Vernon actually spoke. Funny way to get to wizard school, the train. Magic carpets all got punctures, have they? Harry didn't say anything. Where is this school, anyway? I don't know, said Harry, realising this for the first time. He pulled the ticket Hagrid had given him out of his pocket. I just take the train from platform 9 3/4 at 11 o'clock, he read. His aunt and uncle stared. Platform what? 9 3/4. Don't talk rubbish, said Uncle Vernon. There is no platform 9 3/4. It's on my ticket. Barking, said Uncle Vernon. Howling mad, the lot of them. You'll see, just you wait. All right, we'll take you to King's Cross. We're going up to London tomorrow anyway, and I wouldn't bother. Why are you going to London? Harry asked, trying to keep things friendly. Taking Dudley to hospital, growled Uncle Vernon. Got to have that Rudy tail removed before he goes smeltings. Harry woke at 5 o'clock the next morning and was too excited and nervous to go back to sleep. He got up and put on his jeans because he didn't want to walk into the station in his wizard's robes. He'd change on the train. He checked his Hogwarts list again, just to make sure he had everything he needed, saw that Hedwig was shut safely in her cage, and then paced the room, waiting for the Dursleys to get up. 2 hours later, Harry's huge heavy trunk had been loaded into the Dursleys' car. Aunt Petunia had already talked Dudley into sitting next to Harry, and they set off. They reached King's Cross at 10:30. Uncle Vernon dumped Harry's trunk onto a trolley and wheeled it into the station for him. Harry thought this was strangely kind until Uncle Vernon stopped dead, facing the platforms with a nasty grin on his face. Well, there you are, my boy. Platform 9, Platform 10. Your platform should be somewhere in the middle, but you don't seem to have built it yet, do they? But they don't seem to have built it yet, do they? Hello, blue, 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 blue. Hello. What are you biting me for? That's cheeky. You don't biting. He was quite right, of course. There was a big plastic number 9 over one platform and a big plastic number 10 over the one next to it. And in the middle, nothing at all. Have a good term, said Uncle Vernon with an even nastier smile. He left without another word. Harry turned and saw the Dursleys drive away. All three of them were laughing. Harry's mouth went rather dry. What on earth is he going to do? He was starting to attract a lot of funny looks because of Hedwig. He'd have to ask someone. He stopped a passing guard, but didn't dare mention platform 9 3/4. The guard had never heard of Hogwarts, and when Harry couldn't even tell him what part of the country it was in, he started to get annoyed, as though Harry was being stupid on purpose. Getting desperate, Harry asked for the train that left at 11 o'clock, but the guard said there wasn't one. In the end, the guard strode away, muttering about time wasters. Harry was now trying hard not to panic. According to the large clock over the arrivals board, he had 10 minutes left to go to the train to Hogwarts, and he had no idea how to do it. He was stranded in the middle of a station with a trunk he could hardly lift, a pocket full of wizard money, and a large owl. Hagrid must have forgotten to tell him something you had to do by tapping the third brick to the left to get into Diagon Alley. He wondered if he should get out his wand and start tapping the ticket box between platforms 9 and 10. At that moment, a group of people passed by just behind him, and he caught a few words of what they were saying. Packed with muggles, of course. Harry swung around. The speaker was a plump woman who was talking to 4 boys, all with flaming red hair. Each of them was pushing a trunk like Harry's in front of them, and they had an owl. Heart hammering, Harry pushed his trolley after them. They stopped, and so did he, just near enough to hear what they were saying. "Now, what's the platform number?" said the boy's mother. 9 3/4, piped a small girl, also red-headed, who was holding her hand. "Mum, can't I go?" "You're not old enough, Ginny. Now, be quiet. All right, Percy, you go first." What looked like the oldest boy marched towards the platforms 9 and 10. Harry watched, carefully not to blink in case he missed it. But just as the boy reached the divide between the 2 platforms, a large crowd of tourists came swarming in front of him, and by the time the last rucksack had cleared away, the boy had vanished. "Fred, you next," the plump woman said. "I'm not Fred, I'm George," said the boy. "Honestly, woman, call yourself our mother. Can't you tell I'm George?" "Oh, sorry, George, dear." "Only joking, I am Fred," said the boy, and off he went. His twin called after him to hurry up, and he must have done, because a second later, he had gone. But how had he done it? Now the third brother was walking briskly towards the ticket barrier. He was almost there, and then, quite suddenly, he wasn't anywhere. There was nothing else for it. "Excuse me," Harry said to the plump woman. "Hello, dear," she said. "First time at Hogwarts? Ron's new too." She pointed to the last and youngest of her sons. He was tall and thin and gangly, with freckles, big hands and feet, and a long nose. "Yes," said Harry. The thing is, I don't know how to get on the platform," she said kindly, and Harry nodded. "Not to worry," she said. "All you have to do is walk straight at the barrier between platforms 9 and 10. Don't stop and don't be scared, or you'll crash into it. That's very important. Best to do a bit of a run-up if you're nervous. Go on, go now before Ron." Okay," said Harry. He pushed his trolley around and stared at the barrier. It looked very solid. He started to walk towards it. People jostled him on their way to the platforms 9 and 10. Harry walked much quicker. He was going to smash right into the ticket box, and then he'd be in trouble. Leaning forward on his trolley, he broke into a heavy run. The barrier was coming nearer and nearer. He wouldn't be able to stop. The trolley was out of control. He was a foot away. He closed his eyes, ready for the crash. It didn't come. He kept on running. He opened his eyes. A scarlet steam engine was waiting next to a platform, packed with people. A sign overhead said, "Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. Bah. Oh shit, oh fuck. Hello, Timmy. Harry looked behind him and saw a wrought iron archway where the ticket box had been, with the words Platform 9 3/4 on it. He had done it. Smoke from the engine drifted overheads of the chattering crowd, while cats of every colour wound here and there between their legs. Owls hooted to each other in a disgruntled sort of way over the babble and the scraping of heavy trunks. The first few carriages were already packed with students, some hanging out of the window to talk to their families, some fighting over seats. Harry pushed his trolley off down the platform in search of an empty seat. He passed a round-faced boy who was saying, "Gran, I've lost my toad again." It's fucking Neville. It's Neville. "Oh, Neville," he heard the old woman sigh. A boy with dreadlocks was surrounded by a small crowd. "Give us a look, Lee. Go on." The boy lifted the lid off the box in his arms, and the people around him shrieked and yelled as something inside poked out a long, hairy leg. Harry pressed on through the crowd until he found an empty compartment near the end of the train. He put Hedwig inside first, and then he started to shove and heave his trunk towards the train door. He tried to lift it up the steps, and could hardly raise one end, and twice he dropped it painfully on his foot. Once a hand, it was one of the redhead twins he'd followed through the ticket box. "Yes, please," Harry panted. "Oi, Fred, come here and help." With the twins' help, Harry's trunk was last tucked away in the corner of the compartment. "Thanks," said Harry, pushing his sweaty hair out of his eyes. "What's that?" said one of the twins suddenly, pointing at Harry's lightning scar. Blimey, said one of the other twins. Are you? He is, said the first twin. Aren't you? He added to Harry. What? Said Harry. Harry Potter, chorused the twins. Oh, him, said Harry. I mean, yes, I am. The boys gawped at him, and Harry felt himself going red. Then, to his relief, a voice came floating in through the train's open door. Fred? George, are you there? Coming, Mum. With a last look at Harry, the twins hopped off the train. Harry sat down next to the window where, half hidden, he could watch the red-haired family on the platform and hear what they were saying. Their mother had just taken out her handkerchief. Ron, you've got something on your nose. The youngest boy tried to jerk out of the way, but she grabbed him and began rubbing the end of his nose. Mum, get off! He wriggled free. Ah, has Ickle Ronnie something on his nose? Said one of the twins. Shut up, said Ron. Where's Percy? Said their mother. He's coming now. The oldest boy came striding into sight. He'd already changed into his billowing black Hogwarts robes, and Harry noticed a shiny red and gold badge on his chest, with the letter P on it. Can't stay any longer, Mother, he said. I'm up front. The prefects have got 2 compartments to themselves. Oh, are you a prefect, Percy? Said one of the twins, with an air of great surprise. You should have said something. We had no idea. Hang on, I think I remember him saying something about it, said the other twin. Once, or twice, a minute, all summer. Oh, shut up, said Percy the prefect. How come Percy gets new robes anyway? Said one of the twins. Because he's a prefect, said their mother fondly. All right, dear, well, have a good term. Send me an owl when you get there. She kissed Percy on the cheek and he left. Then she turned to the twins. Now you two, this year, you behave yourselves. If I get one more owl telling me you've blown up another toilet or blown up a toilet, we've never blown up a toilet. Great idea though, thanks Mum. It's not funny. And look after Ron. Don't worry, Ickle Ronnie Keens is safe with us. Shut up, said Ron. He was almost as tall as the twins already, and his nose was still pink where their mother had rubbed it. Percy's a wanker. Percy was just very goody-goody two-shoes, yeah. Hey, Mum, guess what? Guess who we just met on the train? Harry leant back quickly so they wouldn't see him looking. You know that black-haired boy who was just with us near the station? You know who he is? Who? Harry Potter. Harry heard the little girl's voice. Oh, Mum, can I go on the train and see him? Mum, oh please. You've already seen him, Ginny, and the poor boy isn't something you goggle at in a zoo. Is he really, Fred? How do you know? Asked him. Saw his scar. It's really there, like lightning. Oh, poor dear. No wonder he was all alone. I wondered. He was ever so polite when we asked how to get on the platform. Never mind that. Do you think he remembers what you-know-who looks like? Their mother suddenly became very stern. I forbid you to ask him, Fred. No, don't you dare. As though he needs reminding of that on his first day of school. All right, keep your hair on. A whistle sounded. Hurry up, their mother said, and the 3 boys clambered onto the train. They leant out the window for her to kiss them goodbye, and the youngest sister began to cry. Don't, Ginny. We'll send you loads of owls. We'll send you a Hogwarts toilet seat. George! Only joking, Mum. The train began to move. Harry saw the boys' mother waving, and their sister, half laughing, half crying, running to keep up with the train until it gathered too much speed. Then she fell back and waved. Harry watched the girl and her mother disappear as the train rounded the corner. Houses flashed past the window. Harry felt a great leap of excitement. He didn't know what he was going to. But it'd be better than what he was leaving behind. The door of the compartment slid open, and the youngest redhead boy came in. Anyone sitting there? He asked, pointing at the seat opposite Harry. Everywhere else is full. Harry shook his head, and the boy sat down. He glanced at Harry, then looked quickly out of the window. Pretending he hadn't looked, Harry saw he had still had the black mark on his nose. Hey, Ron. The twins were back. Listen, we're going down the middle of the train. Lee Jordan's got a giant tarantula down there. Right, mumbled Ron. Harry, said the other twin, did we introduce ourselves? Fred and George Weasley, and this is Ron, our brother. Anyway, see you later then. Bye, said Harry and Ron. The twins slid the compartment door shut and shut behind them. Are you really Harry Potter? Ron blurted out. Harry nodded. Oh, well, I thought you might be one of Fred and George's jokes, said Ron. And have you really got, you know? Harry pointed at his forehead. Sorry, he pointed at Harry's forehead. Harry pulled back his fringe to show the lightning scar. Ron stared. So that's where you know who? Yes, said Harry, but I can't remember it. Nothing, said Ron eagerly. Well, I remember a lot of green light, but nothing else. Wow, said Ron. He sat and stared at Harry for a few moments. Then, as though he had suddenly realised what he was doing, he quickly looked out the window again. Are all your family wizards? Asked Harry, who found Ron just as interesting as Ron found him. Yes, I think so, said Ron. I think Mum's got a second cousin who's an accountant, but we never talk about him. So you must know loads of magic already. The Weasleys were clearly one of those old wizarding families the pale boy in Diagon Alley was talking about. I heard you went to live with Muggles, said Ron. What are they like? Horrible. Well, not all of them. My aunt and uncle and cousin are, though. Wish I had 3 wizard brothers. 5, said Ron. For some reason, he was looking gloomy. I'm the 6th in our family to go to Hogwarts. You could say I've got a lot to live up to. Bill and Charlie have already left. Bill was head boy and Charlie was captain of Quidditch. Now Percy's a prefect and Fred and George mess around a lot, but they're still really good marks and everyone thinks they're really funny. Everyone expects me to do as well as the others, but if I do, it's no big deal because they have already done it. You never get anything new either. With 5 brothers, I've got Bill's old robes, Charlie's old wand, and Percy's old rat. Ron reached inside his jacket and pulled out a fat grey rat which was asleep. His name's Scabbers, and he's useless. He hardly ever wakes up. Percy got an owl from my dad for being made a prefect, but they couldn't afford... I got Scabbers instead. Ron's ears went pink. He seemed to think he'd said too much because he went back to staring out the window. Harry didn't think there was anything wrong with not being able to afford an owl. After all, he'd never had any money in his life until a month ago. And he told Ron so, all about having to wear Dudley's old clothes and never getting proper birthday presents. This seemed to cheer Ron up. And until Hagrid told me, I didn't even know anything about being a wizard, or about my parents, or Voldemort. Ron gasped. What? Said Harry. You said you know whose name? Said Ron, sounding both shocked and impressed. I'd have thought you of all people. I'm not trying to be brave or anything, saying the name, said Harry. I just never knew you shouldn't. See what I mean? I've got loads to learn, I bet, he added, voicing for the first time something that had been worrying him a lot lately. I bet I'm the worst in class. You won't be. There's loads of people that come from Muggle families, and they learn quick too. While they'd been talking, the train had carried them out of London. Now they were speeding past fields full of cows and sheep. Sheepies, yay. They were quiet for a while, watching the fields and lanes flick past. Around 12:30, there was a giant clattering outside in the corridor, and a smiling, dimpled woman slid back their door and said, "Anything off the trolley, dears?" I fucking love that scene. Harry, who hadn't had any breakfast, leapt to his feet, but Ron's ears went pink again, and he muttered he'd brought a sandwich. Harry went out into the corridor. He had never had any money for sweets, with the Dursleys now that he had pockets rattling with gold and silver. He was ready to buy as many Mars bars as he could carry. But the woman didn't have Mars bars. What she did have were Bertie Bott's ever-flavoured beans, Trubel's best blowing gum, chocolate frogs, pumpkin pasties, cauldron cakes, licorice wands, and a number of other strange things Harry had never seen in his life. Not wanting to miss anything, he got some of everything and paid the woman 11 silver sickles and 7 bronze nuts. Ron stared at Harry as Harry brought it all back to the compartment and tipped it onto an empty seat. Hungry, are you? Starving, said Harry, taking a large bite of the pumpkin pasty. Ron had taken out a lumpy package and unwrapped it. There were 4 sandwiches in there. He pulled one of them apart and said, "She always forgets I don't like corned beef." Swap you one of these, said Harry, holding up a pasty. Go on. You don't want this. It's all dry, said Ron. She hasn't got much time, he added quickly. You know, with 5 of us. Go on, have a pasty, said Harry, who had never had anything to share before, or indeed anyone to share it with. It was a nice feeling sitting there with Ron, eating their way through all of Harry's pasties and cakes. The sandwiches lay forgotten. What are these? Harry asked Ron, holding up a pack of chocolate frogs. They're not really frogs, are they? He was starting to feel that nothing would surprise him. No, said Ron, but see what the card is. I'm missing a gripper. What? Oh, of course you wouldn't know. Chocolate frogs have cards inside them, you know, to collect. Famous witches and wizards. I've got about 500, but I haven't got a gripper or plot me. Harry unwrapped his chocolate frog and picked up the card, and showed a man's face. He wore half-moon glasses, had a long crooked nose and flowing silver hair, beard and a moustache. Underneath the picture was the name Albus Dumbledore. I'll take the whole trolley. You've been a bit of a fat people-shy boy there, Timmy. So this is Dumbledore, said Harry. Don't tell me you'd never heard of Dumbledore, said Ron. Can I have a frog? I might get a gripper. Thanks. Harry turned over the card and it read, Albus Dumbledore, currently headmaster of Hogwarts, considered by many the greatest wizard of modern times. Professor Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, for the discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner Nicholas Flamel. Professor Dumbledore enjoys chamber music and 10-pin bowling. Harry turned the card back over and saw, to his astonishment, that Dumbledore's face had disappeared. He's gone. Well, you can't expect him to hang around all day, said Ron. He'll be back. No, I've got Morgana again, and I've got about 6 of her. Do you want it? You can start collecting. Ron's eyes strayed to the pile of chocolate frogs waiting to be unwrapped. Help yourself, said Harry. But in, you know, the Muggle world, people just say, put in photos. Do they? What? They don't move at all. Ron sounded amazed. Weird. Harry stared at Dumbledore's sidled back into the picture on his card, and he gave him a small smile. Ron was more interested in eating the frogs than looking at the famous witches and wizards cards, but Harry couldn't keep his eyes off them. Soon he had not only Dumbledore and Morgana, but Hengist of Woodcroft, Alberic Grunion, Circe, Paracelsus, and Merlin. He finally tore his eyes away from the druidess Cleodna, who was scratching her nose, to open a bag of Bertie Bott's ever-flavoured beans. Oh, this'll go well. You want to be careful with those, Ron warned Harry. When they say every flavour, they mean every flavour. You know, you get all the ordinary ones like chocolate and peppermint, marmalade, but you can get spinach and liver and tripe. George reckons he had a bogey-flavoured one once. Ron picked up a green bean, looked at it carefully and bit into the corner. Blah! See? Sprouts. They had a good time eating every flavour of beans. Harry got toast, coconut, baked bean, strawberry, curry, grass, coffee, sardine, and was even brave enough to nibble the end of a funny grey one Ron wouldn't touch, which turned out to be pepper. The countryside, now flying past the window, has become wilder. The neat fields had gone. Now there were woods, twisting rivers, and dark green hills. A sheep-flavoured bean? Oi! No. I mean, technically correct, yes. There would be technically such thing, but no. We're not having a sheep-flavoured one. Silly goose. Silly goose. Beans on toast flavoured? That would be so tasty. Oh, I'd like that. Yeah, give me that. There was a knock on the door of their compartment, and the round-faced boy Harry had passed on the platform 9 3/4 came in. He looked tearful. Sorry, he said, but have you seen my toad at all? When they shook their heads, he wailed. I've lost him. He keeps getting away from me. He'll turn up, said Harry. Yes, said the boy miserably. Well, if you see him. He left. Don't know why he's so bothered, said Ron. If I'd brought a toad, I'd lose it as quick as I could. Mind you, I brought Scabbers, so I can't talk. The rat was still snoozing on Ron's lap. He might have died, and you would never know the difference, said Ron in disgust. I tried to turn him yellow yesterday to make him more interesting, but the spell didn't work. I'll show you, look. He rummaged around in his trunk and pulled out his very battered-looking wand. It was chipped in places and something white was glinting at the end. Unicorn's hair nearly poking out. Anyway, he had just raised his wand when the compartment door slid open again. The toadless boy was back, but this time he had a girl with him. She was already wearing her new Hogwarts robes. Has anyone seen a toad? Neville's lost one, she said. She had a bossy sort of voice, lots of bushy brown hair and rather large front teeth. We've already told him we haven't seen it, said Ron, but the girl wasn't listening. She was looking at the wand in his hand. Oh, are you doing magic? Let's see then. She sat down. Ron looked taken aback. All right. He clears his throat. Sunshine, daisies, butter, mellow. Turn the stupid fat rat yellow. He waved his wand, but nothing happened. Scabbard stayed grey and fast asleep. Are you sure that's a real spell? Said the girl. Well, it's not very good, is it? I've tried a few simple spells just for practice, and it's all worked for me. Nobody in my family's magic at all. It was ever such a surprise when I got my letter. But I was ever so pleased, of course. I mean, it's the very best school of witchcraft there is, I've heard. I've learned all our set books off by heart, of course. I just hope it will be enough. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. Who are you? She said all this very fast. Harry looked at Ron and was relieved to see his stunned face that he hadn't learned all the set books off by heart either. I'm Ron Weasley, Ron muttered. Harry Potter, said Harry. Are you really? Said Hermione. I know all about you, of course. I've got a few extra books for the background reading, and you're in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts and great wizarding events of the 20th century. Am I? Said Harry, feeling dazed. Goodness, didn't you know? I've found everything I could if it was me, said Hermione. Do either of you know the house you'll be in? I've been asking around and I hope I'm in Gryffindor. It sounds by far the best. I heard Dumbledore himself was one, but I suppose Ravenclaw wouldn't be too bad. Anyway, we'd better go and look for Neville's toad. You two had better change, you know. I expect we'll be there soon. And she left, taking the toadless boy with her. Whatever house I'm in, I hope she's not in it, said Ron. He threw his wand back in the trunk. Stupid spell. George gave it to me. Bet he knew it was a dud. What house are you brothers in? Asked Harry. Gryffindor, said Ron. Gloom seemed to be setting in on him again. Mum and Dad were in it too. I don't know what they'll say if I'm not. I don't suppose Ravenclaw would be too bad. But imagine if they put me in Slytherin. That's the house you know who was in. Yeah, said Ron. He flopped back into his seat, looking depressed. I'm off to bed. I will see you tomorrow, mate. Take care, Phantom. Thank you so much for popping by, mate. Have a very good sleep and take care. Have a good day tomorrow. You know, I think the ends of Scabbard's whiskers are a bit lighter, said Harry, trying to take Ron's minds off houses. So what do your oldest brothers do now that they've left anyway? Harry was wondering what a wizard did once he finished school. Charlie's in Romania studying dragons, and Bill's in Africa doing something for Gringotts, said Ron. Did you hear about Gringotts? It's been all over the Daily Prophet, and I don't suppose you get that with the Muggles. Someone tried to rob a high-security vault. Harry stared. Really? What happened to them? Nothing. That's why it's such big news. They haven't been caught. My dad says it must have been a powerful dark wizard to get round Gringotts, but they don't think they took anything. That's what's odd. Of course, everyone gets scared when something like that happens, in case you know who's behind it. Harry turned this news over in his mind. He was starting to get a prickle of fear every time you know who was mentioned. He supposed this was all part of entering the magical world, but it had been a lot more comfortable saying Voldemort without worrying. What's your Quidditch team? Ron asked. I don't know any, Harry confessed. What? Ron looked dumbfounded. Oh, you wait. It's the best game in the world. And he was off, explaining all of the 4 balls, the positions of the 7 players, describing famous games he'd been to with his brothers, and the broomstick he'd like to get if he had the money. He was just talking Harry through the finer points of the game when the compartment door slid open yet again. But it wasn't Neville, the toadless boy, or Hermione Granger this time. 3 boys entered, and Harry recognised the middle one at once. It was the pale boy from Madame Malkin's rope shop. He was looking at Harry with a lot more interest than he'd shown back in Diagon Alley. "Is it true?" he said. "They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter's in this compartment. So it's you, is it?" "Yes," said Harry. He was looking at the other boys. Both of them were thick-set and looked extremely mean, standing either side of the pale boy that looked like bodyguards. "Oh, this is Crabbe and this is Goyle," said the pale boy carelessly, noticing whether Harry was looking. "And my name's Malfoy. Draco Malfoy." Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snigger. Draco Malfoy looked at him. "Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all of the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford." He turned back to Harry. "You'll soon find out some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there." He held out his hand to shake Harry's, but Harry didn't take it. "I think I can tell who's the wrong sort for myself, thanks," he said coolly. Draco Malfoy didn't go red, but a pink tinge appeared in his pale cheeks. "I'd be careful if I were you, Potter," he said slowly. "Unless you're a bit politer, you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them either. You hang around with a riffraff like the Weasleys and that Hagrid, and he'll rub off on you." Both Harry and Ron stood up. Ron's face was red as his hair. "Say that again," he said. "Oh, you're going to fight us, are you?" Malfoy sneered. "Unless you get out now," said Harry, more braver than he felt, because Crabbe and Goyle were a lot bigger than him or Ron. "But we don't feel like leaving, do we, boys? We've eaten all of our food, and you've still got some." Goyle reached towards the chocolate frogs next to Ron. Ron leapt forward, but before he'd so much as touched Goyle, Goyle let out a horrible yell. Scabbers the rat was hanging off his finger. Sharp little teeth sunk deep into Goyle's knuckle. Crabbe and Malfoy backed away as Goyle swung Scabbers round and round, howling. And when Scabbers finally flew off and hit the window, all three of them disappeared at once. Perhaps they thought there were more rats lurking amongst the sweets, or perhaps they'd heard footsteps because a second later, Hermione Granger had come in. "What has been going on?" she said, looking at the sweets all over the floor, and Ron picking up Scabbers by his tail. "I think he's been knocked out," Ron said to Harry. He looked closer at Scabbers. "No, I don't believe it. He's gone back to sleep." And so he had. "You've met Malfoy before?" Harry explaining about their meeting in Diagon Alley. "I've heard of his family," said Ron darkly. "They were some of the first to come back to our side after you-know-who disappeared. Said they'd been bewitched. My dad doesn't believe it. He says Malfoy's father didn't need an excuse to go over to the dark side." He turned to Hermione. "Can we help you with something?" "You'd better hurry up and put your robes on. I've just been to the front to ask the driver, and he says we're nearly there." "You haven't been fighting, have you? You'll be in trouble before we even get there." "Scabbers has been fighting, not us," said Ron, scowling at her. "Would you mind leaving while we change?" "All right. I only came here because people outside were behaving very childishly, racing up and down the corridors," she said, Hermione in a sniffy voice. "And you've got dirt on your nose, by the way. Did you know?" Ron glared at her as she left. Harry peered out the window. It was getting dark. He could see mountains and forests, and a deep purple sky. The train didn't seem to be slowing down. Dickbag Malfuck. That's an interesting name for him. 2 seconds. Just having a sippy. Glad you. He and Ron took off their jackets and pulled on their long black robes. Ron's was a bit short for him. You could see his trainers underneath them. A voice echoed through the train. "We'll be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes' time. Please leave your luggage on the train. It will be taken to the schools separately." Harry's stomach lurched with nerves, and Ron, he saw, looked pale under his freckles. They crammed their pockets with the last of the sweets and joined the crowd thronging the corridor. The train slowed right down and finally stopped. People pushed their way towards the door and out onto a tiny, dark platform. Harry shivered in the cold night air. Then, a lamp came bobbing over their heads of the students, and Harry heard a familiar voice. First years, over here." "All right there, Harry." Hagrid's big hairy face beamed over the sea of heads. "Come on, follow me. Any more first years? Mind your step now. First years, follow me." Slipping and stumbling, they followed Hagrid down the seemed to be a steep, narrow path. It was so dark either side of them that Harry thought there must have been thick trees there. Nobody spoke much. Neville, the boy who kept losing his toad, sniffled once or twice. "You'll get your first sights of Hogwarts in a second," Hagrid called over his shoulder. "Just around the bend here." There was a loud "ooh." The narrow path had opened suddenly to the edge of a great black lake. Perched atop a high mountain on the other side, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, was a vast castle with many turrets and towers. "No more than 4 to a boat," Hagrid called, pointing to a fleet of little boats sitting in the water by the shore. Harry and Ron were followed into their boat by Neville and Hermione. "Everyone in," shouted Hagrid, who had a boat to himself. "Right then. Forward!" And the fleet of little boats moved off all at once, gliding across the lake, which was as smooth as glass. Everyone was silent, staring up at the great castle overhead. It towered over them as they sailed nearer and nearer to the cliff on which it stood. "Heads down!" yelled Hagrid as the first boats reached the cliff. They all bent their heads, and little boats carried them through a curtain of ivy which hid a wide opening in the cliff face. They were carried along a dark tunnel which seemed to be taking them round right underneath the castle, until they reached a kind of underground harbour, where they clambered out onto the rocks and pebbles. "Oi, you there! Is this your toad?" said Hagrid, who was checking the boats as people climbed out of them. "Trevor!" cried Neville, blissfully, holding out his hands. Then they clambered up a passageway in the rock after Hagrid's lamp, coming out at last onto the smooth, damp grass right in the shadow of the castle. They walked up a flight of stone steps and crowded around a huge oak door. "Everyone here? You there, still got your toad?" Hagrid raised a gigantic fist and knocked 3 times on the castle door. Chapter 7. The Sorting Hat. Yippee! The door swung open at once. A tall, black-haired witch in emerald green robes stood there. She had a very stern face, and Harry's first thought was this was not someone to cross. "The first years," Professor McGonagall said. Hagrid. "Thank you, Hagrid. I will take them from here." She pulled the door wide. The entrance hall was so big you could have fitted the whole Dursley's house in it. The stone walls were lit with flaming torches, like the ones at Gringotts. The ceiling was too high to make out, and a magnificent marble staircase facing them led to the upper floors. They followed Professor McGonagall across the flagged stone floor. Harry could hear a drone of hundreds of voices from a doorway to the right. The rest of the school must have already been here, but Professor McGonagall showed the first years into a small, empty chamber off the hall. They crowded in, standing rather close together than they would not usually have done, peering about nervously. "Welcome to Hogwarts," said Professor McGonagall. "The start of term banquet will begin shortly, but before you take your seats in the Great Hall, you will be sorted into your houses. The sorting is a very important ceremony, because while you are here, your house will be something like your family within Hogwarts. You will have classes with the rest of your house, sleep in your house dormitory, and spend free time in your house common room. The 4 houses are called Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Each house has its own noble history, and each has produced outstanding witches and wizards. While you're at Hogwarts, your triumphs will earn you house points, while any rule breaking will lose house points. At the end of the year, the house with the most points is awarded the House Cup, a great honour. I hope each of you will be credit to whichever house becomes yours. The sorting ceremony will take place in a few minutes in the front of the rest of the school. I suggest you all smarten yourselves up as much as you can while you are waiting." Her eyes lingered for a moment on Neville's cloak, which had fastened under his left ear, and on Ron's smudged nose. Harry nervously tried to flatten his hair. "I shall return when we are ready for you," said Professor McGonagall. "Please wait quietly." She left the chamber, and Harry swallowed. "How exactly do they sort us into houses?" he asked Ron. "Some sort of test, I think. Fred said it hurts a lot, but I think he was joking." Harry's heart gave a horrible jolt. A test? in front of the whole school. But he didn't know any magic yet. What on earth would they have him do? He hadn't expected something like this the moment they arrived. He looked around anxiously and saw that everyone else looked terrified too. No one was talking much except Hermione Granger, who was whispering very fast about all the spells she had learnt and wondering which one she'd need. Harry tried hard not to listen to her. He'd never been more nervous. Never, not even when he'd had to take a school report home to the Dursleys saying that he'd somehow turned his teacher's wig blue. He kept his eyes fixed on the door. Any second now, Professor McGonagall would come back and lead him to his doom. Then something happened which made him jump about a foot in the air. Several people behind him screamed. "What the?" he gasped. So did the people around him. About 20 ghosts just streamed through the back wall. Pearly white and slightly transparent, they glided across the room, talking to each other and hardly glancing at the first years. They seemed to be arguing. What looked like a fat little monk was saying, "Forgive and forget, I say. We ought to give him a second chance. My dear Friar, haven't we given Peeves all the chances he deserves? He gives us all a bad name, and you know, he's not really even a ghost. I say, what are you all doing here?" A ghost wearing a ruff and tights had suddenly noticed the first years. Nobody answered. "New students," said the fat friar, smiling around them. "About to be sorted, I suppose." A few people nodded mutely. Hope to see you in Hufflepuff," said the friar. "My old house, you know." "Move along now," said a sharp voice. "The sorting ceremony's about to start." Professor McGonagall had returned. One by one, the ghosts floated away through the opposite wall. "Now, form a line," Professor McGonagall told the first years, "and follow me." Everyone's still awake? I I hope so, but also, if people are asleep, I also have no issue with that either. As long as people are comfy, that's all that matters to me. Feeling oddly as though his legs had turned to lead, Harry got into line behind a boy with sandy hair, with Ron behind him, and they walked out into the chamber, back across the hall, and through a pair of double doors into the great hall. Harry had never even imagined such a strange and splendid place. It was lit by thousands and thousands of candles, which were floating in the air over 4 long tables, where the rest of the students were sitting. These tables were laid with glittering golden plates and goblets. At the top of the hall was another long table where the teachers were sitting. Professor McGonagall led the first years up here, so that they came to a halt in a line facing the other students, with the teachers behind them. The hundreds of faces staring at them. Sorry, I just scrolled and I've lost where I was. There we go. Faces staring at them looked like pale lanterns in the flickering candlelight. Dotted here and there amongst the students, the ghosts shone misty silver. Mainly to avoid all the staring eyes, Harry looked upwards and saw a velvety black ceiling, dotted with stars. He heard Hermione whisper, "It's bewitched to look like the sky outside. I read about it in Hogwarts history." It was hard to believe there was a ceiling there at all. The Great Hall didn't simply open onto the heavens. Harry quickly looked down again at Professor McGonagall, silently placed a 4-legged stool in front of the first years. On top of the stool, she put a pointed wizard's hat. This hat was patched and frayed and extremely dirty. Aunt Petunia wouldn't have let it in the house. Maybe they had to try and get a rabbit out of it, Harry thought wildly. That seemed like the sort of thing, noticing that everybody in the hall was now staring at the hat. He stared at it too. For a few seconds there was complete silence. Then the hat twitched. A rip near the brim opened wide like a mouth, and it began to sing. "Oh, you may not think I'm pretty, but don't judge on what you see. I'll eat myself if you can find a smarter hat than me. You can keep your bowlers black, your top hat sleek and tall, for I'm the Hogwarts sorting hat, and I can cap them all. There's nothing hidden in your head the sorting hat can't see, so try me on and I will tell you where you ought to be. You might belong in Gryffindor, where dwell the brave at heart, their daring nerve and chivalry, set Gryffindors apart. You might belong in Hufflepuff, where they are just and loyal. Those patient Hufflepuffs are true and unafraid of toil. Or yet in wise old Ravenclaw, if you're a ready mind, where those of wit and learning will always find their kind. Or perhaps in Slytherin, you'll make your real friends. Those cunning folk use any means to achieve their ends. So put me on, don't be afraid, and don't get in a flap. You're in safe hands, though I have none, for I'm a thinking cap. Yeah, and I'm gaming. Glad to hear it. Me. So which house am I in? Ha. Expelled. Fuck off. I've done the sorting hat test, and my results came back that I would be in Hufflepuff, apparently. And I was just like, okay, I accept this. That's fine. So I would be a Hufflepuff if I did the test. The whole hall burst into applause as the hat finished its song. It bowed to each of their 4 tables and became quiet still again. So, we've just got to try on the hat, Ron whispered to Harry. I'll kill Fred, he was going on about wrestling a troll. Harry smirked weakly. Yes, trying on the hat was a lot better than having to do a spell, but he did wish they could try it on without everyone watching. The hat seemed to be asking a rather lot. Harry didn't feel brave or quick-witted, or any of it at that moment. If only the hat had mentioned a house for people who felt a bit queasy, that would have been one for him. Professor McGonagall now stepped forward holding a long roll of parchment. When I call your name, you will put on the hat, sit on the stool and be sorted, she said. Abbott Hannah. We should have sorting hat results in Discord. I mean, we could, people could take the test and post the results. That is something we can do. I'll have to find I need to find the quiz that everybody would use. That way we all get the same result, if that makes sense, rather than one website giving you one result and one website giving another. Finding a particular website that everybody would just use, and then that way we're all answering the same questions. Yeah. So, she said Abbott Hannah. A pink-faced girl with blonde pigtails stumbled out of line, put on the hat which fell right down over her eyes, and sat down. A moment's pause. Hufflepuff, shouted the hat. The table on the right cheered and clapped as Hannah went to sit down at the Hufflepuff table. Harry saw the ghost of the fat friar waving merrily at her. Bones Susan. Hufflepuff, shouted the hat again, and Susan scuttled off to sit next to Hannah. Boot Terry. Ravenclaw. The table second from the left clapped this time. Several Ravenclaws stood up to shake hands with Terry as he joined them. Brocklehurst Mandy went to Ravenclaw too, but Brown Lavender became the first new Gryffindor, and the table on the far left exploded with cheers. Harry could see Ron's twin brothers catcalling. Bulstrode Millicent then became a Slytherin. Perhaps it was Harry's imagination. After all, he'd heard about Slytherin, but he thought they looked an unpleasant lot. He was starting to feel definitely sick now. He remembered being picked for teams during sports lessons at school. He had always been the last to be chosen, not because he was no good, because nobody wanted Dudley to think they liked him. Finch Fletchley Justin. Hufflepuff. Sometimes Harry noticed the hat shouted out the house at once, but others it took a little while to decide. Finnegan Seamus, the sandy-haired boy next to Harry in line, sat on the stool and for almost a whole minute before the hat declared him in Gryffindor. Granger Hermione. Hermione almost ran to the stool and jammed the hat eagerly on her head. Gryffindor, shouted the hat. Ron groaned. A horrible thought struck Harry, as horrible thoughts always do when you get very nervous. What if he wasn't chosen at all? What if he just sat there with the hat over his eyes for ages until Professor McGonagall jerked it off his head and said there had obviously been a mistake, and he'd better get back on the train? When Neville Longbottom, the boy who kept losing his toad, was called, he fell over on his way to the stool. The hat took a long time to decide with Neville. When it finally shouted, Gryffindor, Neville ran off, still wearing it, and had to jog back amid gales of laughter to give it to McGonagall. MacDougal Morag. Malfoy swaggered forwards when his name was called, and got his wish at once. The hat had barely touched his head when it screamed, Slytherin. Malfoy went to join his friends Crabbe and Goyle, looking pleased with himself. There weren't many people left now. Moon? Not? Parkinson? Then there were a pair of twin girls, Patil and Patil. Then Perks, Sally Ann. And then, at last, Harry Potter. As Harry stepped forward, whispers suddenly broke out like little hissing fires all over the hall. Potter, did she say? The Harry Potter. The last thing Harry saw before the hat dropped over his eyes was a hall full of people craning to get a good look at him. Next second, he was looking at the backside of the hat. He waited. Said a small voice in his ear. Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind, either. There's talent. Oh, my goodness, yes. There's a nice thirst to prove yourself. Now that's interesting. So where shall I put you? Harry gripped the edges of the stool and thought, not Slytherin. Not Slytherin. Not Slytherin, eh? Said the small voice. Are you sure? You could be great, you know. It's all here in your head. Miss Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness. No doubt about that, no? Well, if you're sure, better be Gryffindor. Harry heard the hat shout the last word to the whole hall, and took off the hat and walked shakily towards Gryffindor table. He was so relieved to have been chosen and not put in Slytherin. He hardly noticed that he was the loudest cheer yet. Percy the prefect got up and shook his hand vigorously, while the Weasley twins yelled, "We got Potter! We got Potter!" Harry sat down opposite the ghost in the ruff he had seen earlier. The ghost patted his arm, giving Harry the sudden horrible feeling as if he'd been plunged into a bucket of ice-cold water. He could see the high table properly now. At the end nearest him sat Hagrid, who caught his eye and gave him the thumbs up. Harry grinned back, and there, in the centre of the high table, a large gold chair, sat Albus Dumbledore. Harry recognised him once from the card he'd got out of the Chocolate Frog on the train. Dumbledore's silver hair was the only thing in the whole hall that shone as brightly as the ghost's. Harry spotted Professor Quirrell, too, the nervous young man from the Leaky Cauldron. He was looking very peculiar in a large purple turban. And now there were only 3 people left to be sorted. Turpin Lisa became Ravenclaw, and then it was Ron's turn. He was pale green by now. Harry crossed his fingers under the table, and a second later the hat shouted, "Gryffindor!" Harry clapped loudly with the rest as Ron collapsed into the chair next to him. "Well done, Ron. Excellent," said Percy Weasley pompously across Harry, as Zabini Blythe was made a Slytherin. Professor McGonagall rolled up her scroll, took the sorting hat away. Harry looked down at his empty gold plate. He had only just realised how hungry he was. The pumpkin pasties seemed ages ago. Albus Dumbledore had got to his feet. He was beaming at the students, his arms open wide, as if nothing could have pleased him more than to see them all there. "Welcome," he said. "Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I would like to say a few words, and here they are. Nitwit, Blubber, Oddment, Tweak. Thank you." He sat back down, everybody clapped and cheered. Harry didn't know whether to laugh or not. "Is he a bit mad?" he asked Percy uncertainly. "Mad?" said Percy airily. "He's a genius. Best wizard in the world. But he is a bit mad, yes. Potatoes, Harry." Harry's mouth fell open. The dishes in front of him were now piled with food. He had never seen so many things he liked to eat on one table. Roast beef, roast chicken, pork chops and lamb chops. Sausages, bacon and steak. Boiled potatoes, roast potatoes, chips, Yorkshire puddings, peas, carrots, gravy, ketchup, and for some strange reason, mint humbugs. The Dursleys had never exactly starved Harry, but he'd never been allowed to eat as much as he liked. Dudley had always taken anything that Harry really wanted, even if it made him sick. Harry piled his plate with a bit of everything except the humbugs, and began to eat. It was all delicious. "That does look good," said the ghost in the ruff sadly, watching Harry cut up his steak. "Can't you—" "I haven't eaten for nearly 500 years, said the ghost. "I don't need to, of course, but one does miss it. I don't think I've introduced myself. Sir Nicholas de Mimsey Porpington, at your service. Resident ghost of Gryffindor Tower. I know who you are, said Ron suddenly. My brother's told me about you. You're nearly Headless Nick. I would prefer if you call me Sir Nicholas de Mimsey. The ghost began stiffly. But sandy-haired Seamus Finnegan interrupted. Nearly headless? How can you be nearly headless? Sir Nicholas looked extremely miffed, as if the little chap wasn't going all the way he wanted. Like this, he said irritably. He seized his left ear and pulled, and his whole head swung open off his neck and fell onto his shoulder, as if it was on a hinge. Someone had obviously tried to behead him, but not done it properly. Looking pleased at the stunned looks on their faces, nearly headless Nick flipped his head back onto his neck, coughed, and said, So, new Gryffindors. I hope you're going to help us win the house championship this year. Gryffindor have never gone so long without winning. Slytherin have got the cup 6 years in a row. The bloody Baron's becoming almost unbearable. He's a Slytherin ghost. Harry looked over at the Slytherin table and saw a horrible ghost sitting there, with blank staring eyes, a gaunt face and robes stained with silver blood. He was right next to Malfoy, who, Harry was pleased to see, didn't look too pleased with the seating arrangements. How did he get covered in blood? Asked Seamus with great interest. I've never asked, said nearly headless Nick, delicately. When everyone had eaten as much as they could, the remains of the food faded from their plates, leaving them sparkling clean as before. A moment later, the puddings arrived. Blocks of ice cream in every flavour you could think of. Apple pies, treacle tarts, chocolate eclairs, and jam donuts, trifle, strawberries, jelly, rice pudding. As Harry helped himself to a treacle tart, the talk turned to their families. I'm half and half, said Seamus. My dad's a muggle. Mum didn't say she was a witch till after they were married. Bit of a nasty shock for him. The others laughed. What about you, Neville? Said Ron. Well, my gran brought me up, and she's a witch, said Neville. But the family thought I was a muggle for ages. My great-uncle Algie kept trying to catch me off guard and force some magic out of me. He pushed me off the end of Blackpool Pier once. I nearly drowned. But nothing happened until I was 8. Great-uncle Algie came round for tea, and he was hanging out of an upstairs window by the ankles when my great-aunt Enid offered him a meringue and he accidentally let go. But I bounced all the way down the garden and into the road. They were all really pleased. Gran was crying, she was so happy. And you should have seen their faces when I got in here. They thought I might not be magic enough to come, you see. Great Uncle Algie was so pleased he bought me a toad. On Harry's other side, Percy Weasley and Hermione were talking about lessons. I do hope they start straight away. There's so much to learn. I'm particularly interested in transfiguration. You know, turning something into something else. Of course, it's supposed to be very difficult. You'll be starting small, just matching into needles and that sort of thing. Harry, who started to feel warm and sleepy, looked up at the high table again. Hagrid was drinking deeply from his goblet. Professor McGonagall was talking to Professor Dumbledore. Professor Quirrell, in his absurd turban, was talking to a teacher with greasy black hair, a hooked nose, and sallow skin. Also my favourite character. Wait, they remind me of that guy from The Witcher 3. Wait, which bit? Sorry. Which bit? I do apologise, I've been reading, I forgot to check chat. Yeah, a nice pud. All those desserts sounded fucking delicious to me. Yeah. It happened very suddenly. The hook-nosed teacher looked past Quirrell's turban straight into Harry's eyes, and a sharp, hot pain shot across his scar on Harry's forehead. Ouch, said Harry, clapping his hand to his head. What is it? Asked Percy. Nothing. The pain had gone as quickly as it had come. Harder to shake off was the feeling that Harry had got from the teacher's look. A feeling he didn't like Harry at all. Who's that teacher talking to Professor Quirrell? He asked Percy. Oh, you know Quirrell already, do you? No wonder he's looking so nervous. That's Professor Snape. He teaches potions, but he doesn't want to. Everybody knows he's after Quirrell's job. Knows an awful lot about dark arts, Snape. Harry watched Snape for a while, but Snape didn't look at him again. At last, the puddings too disappeared, and Professor Dumbledore got to his feet again. The hall fell silent. Ahem, just a few more words, now that we're all fed and watered. I have a few start of term notices to give you. First years should note that the forest in the grounds is forbidden to all pupils, and a few of our older students would do well to remember that as well. Dumbledore's twinkling eyes flashed in the direction of the Weasley twins. I have also been asked by Mr. Filch, the caretaker, to remind you all that no magic should be used between classes in the corridors. Quidditch trials will be held in the second week of term. Anyone interested in playing for their house teams should contact Madam Hooch. And finally, I must tell you that this year, the third floor corridor on the right-hand side is out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. Harry laughed, but he was one of the few that did. He's not serious, he muttered to Percy. Must be, said Percy, frowning at Dumbledore. It's odd because he usually gives us a reason why we're not allowed to go somewhere. The forest's full of dangerous beasts. Everyone knows that. I do think he might have told us prefects at least. And now, before we go to bed, let us sing the school song. There's a fucking school song? Cried Dumbledore. Harry noticed that the other teacher's smile become rather fixed. Dumbledore gave his wand a little flick, as if he was trying to get a fly off the end, and a long golden ribbon flew out of it, which rose high above the tables and twisted itself, snake-like, into words. Everyone pick their favourite tune, said Dumbledore, and off we go. And the school bellowed. Hogwarts, Hogwarts, hoggy, warty Hogwarts. Teach us something, please. Whether we be old and bold, or young with scabby knees, our heads could do with filling, with some interesting stuff. But now they're bare and full of air, dead flies and bits of fluff. So teach us things worth knowing. Bring back what we've forgot. Just do your best, we'll do the rest, and learn until our brains all rot. Everybody finished the song at different times. At last, only the Weasley twins were left singing along to a very slow funeral march. Dumbledore conducted their last few lines with his wand, and they were finished. He was one of those who clapped loudest. Ah, music, he said, wiping his eyes, and magic beyond all we do here. And now, bedtime. Off you trot. The Gryffindor first years followed Percy through the chattering crowds, out of the great hall and up the marble staircase. Harry's legs were like lead again, but only because he was so tired and full of food. He was too sleepy even to be surprised that the people in the portraits along the corridors whispered and pointed as they passed, or that twice Percy led them through doorways hidden behind sliding panels and hanging tapestries. They climbed more staircases, yawning and dragging their feet, and Harry was just wondering how much further they had to go when they came to a sudden halt. A bundle of walking sticks was floating in the air ahead of them, and Percy took a step towards them. They started throwing themselves at him. Peeves, Percy whispered to the first years. A poltergeist. He raised his voice. Peeves, show yourself. A loud, rude sound, like the air being let out of a balloon, answered. Do you want me to go to the bloody Baron? There was a pop, and a little man with wicked dark eyes and a wide mouth appeared, floating cross-legged in the air, clutching the walking sticks. Ooh, he said with an evil cackle. Ickle thirsties. What fun. He swooped suddenly at them. They all ducked. Go away, Peeves, or the Baron will hear about this. I mean it, barked Percy. Olgierd von Everich from the Heart of Stone DLC. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Uh-huh. I know who you're on about now. Yeah. Peeves stuck out his tongue and vanished, dropping the walking sticks on Neville's head. They heard him zooming away, rattling coats of armour as he passed. You want to watch out for Peeves, said Percy as they sod off again. The bloody Baron's the only one that can control him. He won't even listen to us prefects. Here we are. At the end of the corridor hung a portrait of a very fat woman in pink silk dress. Password, she said. Caput Draconis, said Percy, and the portrait swung open to reveal a round hole in the wall. They all scrambled through it. Neville needed a leg up, and found themselves in the Gryffindor common room, a cosy, round room full of squashy armchairs. Percy directed the girls through one door to their dormitory, and the boys through another. At the top of a spiral staircase, they were obviously in one of the towers, they found their beds. At last. 5 four-posters hung with deep red velvet curtains. Their trunks had already been brought up. Too tired to talk much, they pulled on their pajamas and fell into bed. Great food, isn't it? Ron muttered to Harry through the hangings. Get off, Scabbers! It's chewing my sheets. Harry was going to ask Ron if he'd had any of the treacle tart, but he fell asleep almost at once. Perhaps Harry had eaten too much, because he had a very strange dream. He was wearing Professor Quirrell's turban, which kept talking to him, telling him he must transfer to Slytherin at once, because it was his destiny. Harry told the turban he didn't want to be in Slytherin. It got heavier and heavier. He tried to pull it off, but it tightened painfully, and there was Malfoy, laughing at him as he struggled with it. Then, Malfoy turned into the hook-nosed teacher, Snape, whose laugh became high and cold. There was a burst of green light and Harry woke up, sweating and shaking. He rolled over and fell asleep again, and when he woke next day, he couldn't remember the dream at all. And that is a perfect place for us to end, because we're just starting chapter 8, also on page 100.